as well. It would be Ronald Reagan.
The next question will come from Mrs. Stebbins, directed to Mr. Shores.
Mr. Shores, our troops have been fighting the war against terrorism bravely since 2001. What is your position on the success of their mission, and do you think all of our troops should come home now?
Thank you very much, and I've been leaning into the microphone. Are you guys able to hear me from here, or is it better this way? Okay. Well, first of all, anyone that serves on behalf of our nation is an absolute patriot. They are the heroes that we need to honor every single day. My first year of law school is when 9/11 happened, and that hit me right here, and it's still there. And we were attacked, blindsided, innocent women and children and other adults were killed that day. And that's something that we can never forget. If there's anything that we learned of that day, is that we need to anticipate what the threats are. There's a huge threat right now that isn't really put out there in the press, and that's with cyber terror. And there's a 60 Minutes piece that was in 2007 that indicated that there was a foreign entity that had downloaded 12 terabytes of information from our various departments. And to give you context, 12 terabytes is about equivalent to the amount of information in the Library of Congress, of classified information. That happened in 2007. We need to be vigilant. And I can also recall before 2001, reading the paper about Osama bin Laden in the New York Times, thinking, geez, that'll never happen to us. We need to be vigilant. And if we have troops that are abroad in a engagement that is not productive, isn't accomplishing the mission, then they need to come home. But we need to be vigilant abroad as well as at home.
Mr. Allegro?
Would you repeat that question? I'd like to answer it precisely.
Yes. Dr. Allegro, our troops have been fighting the war against terrorism bravely since 2001. What is your position on the success of the mission, and do you think all of our troops should come home now?
I think we were having success until the individual who currently occupies the Oval Office took power in Washington. Just before he came in, we had our first surge. Listen, I've spoken to a number of veterans, and I could never imagine what it must be like to be out in the field, sent to do a mission, and have one hand tied behind your back, immediately have someone yanking back on the reins and not letting you go and do the job that you're supposed to do. So my answer to the question is if we're not going to let our military do what they need to do, then bring them home. And I think that answers it as close up. However, I'll finish it by saying, if we're going to deploy our military and ask them to do a particular job, then we should leave them there until the job is done, safely, securely, and stably, which we have not done, neither in Iraq nor in Afghanistan, and truly, with just a couple of exceptions, haven't done since World War II.
Thank you. Mr. Chapman?
I'm going to step back a minute and just mention my political philosophy about our national security first, which is to maintain peace through strength. That was what my political mentor always said, and I believe that. We need to maintain a strong military, and we need to protect our national interests in the interests of our friends and allies. Particularly those who support and embrace our democratic way of life. As I mentioned before, the current administration's policies are unclear, and they're misdirected, and they're weak, and we can do so much better. The reason we went into Iraq and the reason we went into Afghanistan are related reasons. We went into Iraq because we thought there were weapons of mass destruction. Went into Afghanistan because of the threat of Al-Qaeda. I think our troops should come home, just like Mark said, when we know our job is done. And the reasons we went into these foreign places And we want to make sure that that the country is secure and safe, and that our interests for ourselves and our allies are also secure and safe.
Mr. Cogliano.
Does everyone here remember General Norman Schwarzkopf? General Schwarzkopf was a lieutenant colonel in Vietnam. Like a lot of folks who were in Vietnam, he was not very happy about the way that war was conducted and the needless deaths of so many people that he led in battle. When he was asked to take over as the commanding general for the first Gulf War, he said he would, but under one condition. I'll do it if you let me win. That's what he did. In war, that must be the goal, is to win. You don't commit your troops to let them give up their lives senselessly for no gain or for a stalemate. That's not the way it's done. We need more generals, and by the way, we've got a lot fewer of generals in the Pentagon like Norman, because so many of them have left because they've been so unhappy. And that's a tough thing. As to whether or not we should get out, my answer is yes, now. We're not committed to winning. We're only committed to getting more people killed for no gain. I was in the military. I don't want to see anyone who served die needlessly. And right now, for the foreseeable future, this is a bad war, and we shouldn't be there.
The next question will come from Mr. Neal and start with Mr. Allegro.
Dr. Allegro, the Congressional Budget Office now states that some 2.5 million Americans will lose their jobs because of the impact of Obamacare. Congressman Keating supports Obamacare and seems silent on reform ideas. What is your position?
Obamacare was, well, my position first to answer your question. Repeal it. Repeal it in pieces before it collapses and leaves a calamity in its wake. That's the answer to your question. Obamacare was instituted, theoretically, for two reasons. One was to ensure the estimated 30 million Americans that we had that were uninsured at the time. Two was to cut back on the cost of medical health insurance in this country. Let's examine both of those goals. Today, after just a couple of months of semi-full-fledged Obamacare, we have more Americans uninsured than we did before. At the end of this year, it's projected that we'll have, instead of 30 million uninsured Americans, we'll have 50 million uninsured Americans. That may come down. The rosy projections are that it may come down by 2024 to where it started. So, that's number one. Obamacare did not and is not going to insure largely the same pool of people who weren't insured before. Item number two is the cost. Obamacare was supposed to reduce costs. We all know that, as Mr. Neal said, it's going to lead to unemployment, and the CBO has just revised their numbers upwardly. We all know that the cost is skyrocketing on a daily basis, and even the cost of premiums. And we have a model here in Massachusetts where we have a precursor to Obamacare, and for all of its benefits and pluses and minuses, the fact of the matter is that health insurance in Massachusetts has gone up to become the highest insurance cost in the country. We already know the CBO projections for individual states. They're due to increase by anywhere from 20% up to 200%, depending on the state and exchange. It's a disaster. Dump it.
Mr. Chapman.
Well, as I mentioned in my opening statement, Obamacare is why I'm running. It's the issue that got me off the couch. It's a complete failure. And just like you mentioned, Dave, the CBO, which by the way is a nonpartisan body, issued this report talking about 2.5 million jobs that are lost. It also mentioned there's going to be $1 trillion added to the budget. That's far from being affordable. Bill Keating, as Dave just mentioned, has defended Obamacare every step of the way. This reason alone should keep him from being reelected. And I'm a federalist when it comes to health care. And our state should come up with the solutions. Obamacare is too expensive and there's too much federal government intervention.
Jim, I'd like to hear more of what they're saying. The sound doesn't seem to be carrying.
Maybe if the candidates could move the mics a little bit towards them. Go ahead, John.
I was just getting to the most pivotal point. Or you missed it. So I'm a federalist when it comes to health care. Our state should come up with the solutions, and Obamacare is too expensive and too much federal government intervention. I'd rather let the states design their own programs, just as we did here in Massachusetts. I would support the repeal of Obamacare. However, I think that's hard since we're at the place right now, it's already in effect. I think we should revert to the status quo we had here in Massachusetts. States are in a better position to understand the health care needs of their citizens. Romney Care was not perfect, but it was put into effect on a bipartisan basis without raising taxes. And that's it. Thank you.
Vince?
Well, I have to approach this again as a small business person who doesn't want to have to let more people go. Right now, in this state, we do have the highest health care cost in America. A recent study by the Pioneer Institute says we can expect under Obamacare a possible additional 90+% increase. My small company, we pay $15,000 a month in health insurance costs. That might not sound like a lot, but if it doubles to $30,000, I'm going to have to once again lay off some people. Because that's what's required. The economy isn't good enough that I can simply say, well, we'll raise our sales and bring in more dollars to pay for it. If we had a government that was supporting business and doing the right thing, I might be able to say that. But I can't, so this means I would have to let some people go again. It's a bad law. It doesn't deserve our support. I believe it can be repealed. I believe that once the employer mandate goes in, it's going to really decimate employment in this country, as it already has. And we just learned the other day that public employees are now being affected by it. Colleges, laying off people or cutting their hours. A lot of other public employees. This is the fallacy that unions and public employees have always thought, well, that's for everyone else. We can avoid this. That's never been the plan. It's to have everyone in it. And as I've said before, anyone working for a public or private union, the only way you're going to stop being under the exchanges as everyone else is to vote for a Republican. I'd happily take your vote.
Mr. Shores?
So the Congressional Budget Office, as the call of the question indicates, 2 million full-time jobs by 2017. The rationale that the CBO gave was that Obamacare was an implicit tax on earning money. What country are we living in here right now? An implicit tax, so the leadership is taxing your desire to earn money, to be successful, to get a job. That is wrong. Obamacare is wrong. Obamacare has to be repealed. What Obamacare does, it takes $716 billion out of Medicare. It pulls money, it takes money and moves it from one place to the other. It comes from $716 in Medicare, comes from taxes on medical devices like wheelchairs, walkers, pacemakers, real estate taxes, penalties. It moves that, it expands Medicaid, it expands Medicaid coverage, and then it subsidizes insurance policies for those that can't afford it. And then if this goes wrong, the government is supposed to bail out the insurance companies. And to top it all off, the IRS is the enforcement mechanism for this. I mean, this is absolute, it's a redistribution of wealth. And in addition to that, it takes away our freedoms. If you ask, I mean, I've talked to people, they have policies they purchased on the exchanges. Gender reassignment surgery is in their policy, they have no choice. My friend doesn't have any children. Pediatric dental care is required. And we're footing the bill for this. And maybe Justice Roberts was correct, even though I think there was a serious Commerce Clause issue. It is a tax. It's a huge tax. It can be repealed. We can do what we want. We can vote the right people in and vote the wrong people out. We can take laws away and we can put the right laws in. That's all I have to say about the stop sign.
Mrs. Barrett, the next question starting with Mr. Chapman.
Mr. Chapman?